So, I want to talk with you guys about the commander rebalance that happened recently in version 12.10. This is a hot topic. It's been coming up a lot. Zath, would you recommend this? Zath, would you recommend that? So, let's take a look at the changes. Let's talk about what's going to work and what's not going to work. I just realized I'm looking at the wrong camera. That figures. But this is something that Clyde put together, and I want to make sure we give credit where credit's due. He did a fantastic job of putting together all of the different changes and give you an overview about what's happening. So this link is in my Discord. I'll also paste it in chat so you guys can see it as well. If you would like to follow along on your own, you can definitely do so. Okay. But this is Clyde Plays Live, and I'm really excited. He's also fundraising for Stack Up too, so that's really cool to see. Big thanks to Clyde. Very much appreciate him. And remind me later, we'll do a shout out for him. Actually, I could do that right now even. There's his Jedi Commander face thing. So you love destroyers? Ah, well, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that. There's a shot for Clyde. All right. So let's start by just going through the different skills and what they've done. So AA Defense and ASW Expert, you can see they've buffed the amount of damage. And there's one big thing here, and that is they've changed a consumable reload time. So now it's 40% for battleships and 50% for cruisers. Note, anti-air guns have to be active. All right. Now, I will say this in my own experience playing with AA-centric ships, it was very difficult for me to trigger this. I had to have planes coming over me, my anti-air guns firing, and using it at the right time. It's very similar to the Pan-American cruiser line, where you've got to charge up your funny button and then use that funny button at the right time.
I am back.
Welcome back, Runty. So it's a nice skill on paper. The reality of it is, because of the triggering functionality with the reload gun for consumables, I don't find it to be as effective as a lot of people think it should be. Moving on, Consumables Specialist. They removed some cooldown buffs, but they also added cooldown buffs as well for all consumables, 7.5%, except for commanders with the enhanced skill. Now, it doesn't happen to damage control and repair party because that's obviously a different commander skill. So this is for destroyers, cruisers, battleships. It's a nerf to people who use main battery reload booster and torpedo reload booster primarily, but it's a buff to pretty much everything else. Yeah, Clyde did a great job on these, absolutely. So this is a 1-point skill. So this is very handy to kind of get an idea of what's out there. So unless you're playing a French destroyer, you're probably going to find that this is pretty useful for you in most ships, especially cruisers that depend heavily on consumables like the Worcester, for example. It'll be useful on destroyers as well, for the most part.
It's great for destroyers. Like, you often have destroyer builds where you have one leftover point in the end that went into incoming fire alert or something like this. And if you have a lot of consumables, this is great. For example, like Grossovoy. I have a leftover point in the Grossovoy or in my Vampire. Everything with crawling smoke, the 7.5% is a huge buff to the cooldown on the crawling smoke, for example. Really good.
Right. Let's talk about Dazzle. A 4-point skill. We've seen this in King of the Sea. They've added an extra buff now. You get 8% additional speed for 15 seconds if you're detected. So this is pretty much really handy on a destroyer that's going to constantly play within range of radar. For clan battles and King of the Sea, basically your competitive modes, this is very useful. Because you get popped up on radar, that 15 seconds gives you that extra boost necessary to possibly dodge incoming fire and to get out of radar range. So I think it's really useful for just about anything, especially stuff that don't have smoke, right? Jaguar, for example, not Jaguar, a Jaeger would be really handy with this. Grunty, would you agree?
I would not take it on a torpedo destroyer that wants to stay unspotted anyway.
Okay, and why is that?
Because the torpedo destroyers are already kind of starved from points. Like, if you want to take this, you basically have to sacrifice radiolocation.
Mhm.
And I would rather have the radiolocation to avoid accidentally running into an enemy destroyer than having this in case I do get spotted. Because
Chat?
the
Oh,
Jaeger
go ahead.
is not the fastest ship. Like, even if you're faster, when you get spotted. If you get spotted at a wrong angle, you're just going towards the enemy destroyer faster.
So,
And you could be hunted down if you get spotted in the first place because you're not fast enough.
chat, put a pin on this exact moment. We're going to come back to this later. But Grunty is explaining something that I want to get to when we get to the conclusion. So there's Dazzle. Focus fire training. Now, this is another thing that helps with anti-air. We have extra immediate damage when it's activated. We've got... So when you use that focus fire button, right, to focus on one side or the other of the ship. And also reload time and aircraft prep time has also been changed. Now, this is for battleships and cruisers. You can see the point cost is different depending on the situation. And this gives you immediate anti-air damage, of course, when you activate. And then this is good for Dutch cruiser airstrikes. Anything, obviously, that utilizes ASW, so airstrike anti-air. And then, of course, for hybrid ships, this can be handy as well. That being said, this is primarily an anti-air specific build. You're probably not going to really go into speccing for anti-sub much. So again, this is similar to the other skill mentioned earlier, where you're dependent on the enemy having a carrier or two and planes being all over you.
I think the main appeal of this skill is if you have the consumable planes, like be it Dutch airstrikes or hybrid ships. Like, I would only take it for the aircraft preparation time / airstrike for the Dutch. For the AA itself, I mean, it's a nice bonus, but there is so many good 2-point skills or other stuff to take.
Let's move on to Furious, the wonderful 4-point battleship meme that we've always looked at in King of the Sea and just laughed at. So they got rid of a for each fire on your ship, 5% main battery reload time and 5% to dispersion of enemy shells firing at you. And what they've changed it to is the first time you're on fire or flood, your main battery reloads by 10% faster. The second and third, and all the way up to 6, because you could be on 2 floods and 4 fires, right? Now you're talking about what is that? Almost a 50%, isn't it?
30.
30. Yeah.
No, not 30. Sorry, 35.
35. I'm trying to do the math in my head quickly and failing. But a lot of people look at Furious now and say, hey, this is a really good way to buff your guns. Of course, you lose the dispersion buff to incoming fire, so it's going to be easier for you to be shot at versus before it would have been harder for you to be hit. At long range, that could have an impact, right? But the big thing is, you know, some people are thinking maybe you can combine this with super heavy AP, because super heavy AP you burn, if I remember right, you burn longer. Isn't that right?
You burn
You
your
burn
flood
longer, but you
take less damage.
take less damage from the flood. So the idea basically is, okay, I want to be constantly on 1 fire or maybe 2. So like the longer duration is basically not that big of an issue, because you expect to be set on fire the moment the first one runs out anyway.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't know, like, the theory behind it is cool, but the fire damage still stacks up a lot. Like, you need to have a way to get this lost hit points back.
I like what Daystepper said. 2/3 of your health for a 12-second reload buff for less than a minute. I mean, think about that for a second. That's a heavy price for you to dump out more shells. And as Dutch says, yes, it's a 4-point skill. It's very costly to take. Canadian Gamer, you're right. Longer duration just encourages more camping and damage scores from campers instead of trying to win a match. That is true. There have been times, even before Furious was a thing, when I would try to farm Unsinkable with a Conqueror. Ended up being killed because I mistimed everything. So, you know, it can definitely happen. Let's move into improved repair party readiness. After receiving, now I pointed out to him, it's actually 2,000 potential damage. You'll see down here. He changed that out, and Grunty, you got credit for that. So it's 2 million potential damage. You gain 1 extra repair party charge. You want to say something, Grunty? Hey, Full Metal Yankee. Oh. Alright. Unless you're British, you don't have to exit super heal and you're dead because you can't recover the damage fast enough. Right, that's true. Now, it's a 3-point skill. This is basically... all they did was they just kind of added this additional piece to it. So, you gain 1 additional charge of repair party once you hit 2 million potential. I would say, before you spec into this, pay attention to your post-battle screens and look at how much potential damage you had in the battleships that you're thinking about speccing into. Alright? Because very rarely are you going to hit 2 million potential damage in low to medium tiers. At the high tiers, it could work, or it could not. It depends on the ship that you're playing. A Soviet battleship, this is easy. A German battleship, maybe it's easy, but not as easy. A French, a British battleship, again, maybe. French, it's going to be really hard, I would say. It really depends on how you play the ship and what you end up with. And again,
I tried it in Republic. I couldn't do it.
Chat, stick a pin in this. We're going to come back to this one too. Alright, let's move on to Enhanced Torpedo Explosive Charge, Secondary Armaments Specialist. So what they did here was they added secondary battery range. This is a nerf, I love how he put it, to players who think this is the return of secondary cruisers, because he's absolutely right, it's not. It buffs a small pool of cruisers with accurate secondaries, cruisers with secondaries and torps that are worth buffing, because that also increases your torpedo damage too, if I recall correctly.
And like two of the cruisers that are benefiting by this don't even have
the standard thing of the skill is 15% more torpedo damage.
Right. Pogba, what did you say?
Like 2 of the cruisers, like the French the battlecruiser line and the Schroeder, which are benefited by the skill, don't even have torps, so they only benefit from half the skill.
Right.
The only one that really fully benefits from the full skill is the Napoli, since it has both the secondaries and the torps.
And here's the ironic thing. I've seen a lot of people, and I purposely didn't spend a lot of time experimenting because I always have a wait and see approach. I'd rather not waste the time experimenting. I'd rather have somebody else figure it out for me. And I noticed a lot of people experimenting and not making it work. Why? Because you're adding to the range, but you're not doing anything to the dispersion. And the big thing about secondaries is being able to hit targets at that long range. That's why some secondary battleships are better suited than others, right? You might have a secondary Massachusetts up to Ohio, and you might find yourself having a better experience with that than, say, a secondary Alsace and a secondary Bourgogne and Republique, right? Because of the difference in the accuracy that's baked in. And that's kind of what we see here as well. This is, I would say, a noob trap change, because it makes people think they're going to get more mileage out of their secondaries, when the stone cold reality is not so much. Your bread and butter is still going to be your main battery, and if you've got torpedoes, maybe your torpedoes in a close range engagement.
I tried it with the Aegir and the Siegfried. Definitely not worth it in the slightest.
No.
I can't try it on the Schroeder since I don't have it, but I tried it in the Marseille and the Napoli. Worked kind of well there, but definitely not Aegir and Siegfried.
Even on the ships where it's good, like I run it on the Napoli, this is something you take after you take all your other points. Like we're looking at point number 17 or point number 21 where you would take it.
This is a luxury skill. It's not one of the core builds, I did a video, almost 2 years ago now, about core builds. You guys can check it out on YouTube if you want. But I went through each of the different ship classes and the overall core build, what you want to start with your 10 points, with your 14 points. But Grunty's right. This is what you add at the very end when you're at max of everything else. Somebody was saying, hey, you can take the what's the German super cruiser? I just lost it.
Lausewitz?
Yes. You can take that and you can put secondaries. You can go full concealment, and your secondaries are right at your concealment, like within like 0.2 kilometers or something. And that sounds great and sexy on paper, but the reality of it is you can't stealth secondary anymore. So, even having your stealth below your secondaries, it doesn't matter.
Auschwitz doesn't even have improved secondaries, does it?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think it gets improved dispersion. It's
a common rumor, I think, that people say it has improved secondaries, but it doesn't.
It has
So-
a good amount of them per side for a cruiser,
Chat?
but I don't think they have improved accuracy at all.
Stick a pin in this one. We're going to come back to this one again later. Super heavy AP. So now we have the decrease to fire and flood. We were talking about that earlier. But basically now battleships that are on fire and use AP are going to see a little bit reduced fire and flood damage. I like how Clyde says, honestly, who takes the skill? There is synergy with Furious. We talked about that earlier. The only time that I've seen this come in to really handy is, frankly, King of the Sea, other competitive modes where people take a Vermont and they want that extra 10% AP damage or whatever, 7.5. I can't remember the exact number, but they want that extra AP damage. And in a competitive event, when you can maybe better control who can shoot at you and how much fire and flood damage you're going to take, it makes a lot of sense. In a random battle or a ranked battle situation, probably not a good idea. So, I like that Wargaming is changing these commander skills around. I just don't think it's enough. Do these skills work in those modes? Yes, absolutely they do. Because if you're in a
Not
training
commander
room...
talents.
I'm
They're not
Right.
commander
Any skill
talents.
works in every mode. What doesn't work is talents
Correct.
in certain modes, which
Correct.
is special, unique commander stuff.
And buffed commander skills also work, by the way. So if you've got a special commander that buffs survivability expert, that survivability expert buff does come through in tournaments.
I gotta look at my pizza. Be right back.
I actually tried the Kremlin with the improved party readiness and clan battles the other night. It
Mm-hmm.
worked really well. The extra heal does help, especially when there's a bunch of farmy cruisers just trying to farm you down.
Well, and again, clan battles, that's in that competitive environment where you can control how many people can shoot at you and you know, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, you can farm out that potential damage a lot easier, right? Hey, Gary.
I got it within like 5 minutes of just sitting in one spot.
What battleship were you playing?
Kremlin.
Shocked. Absolutely
Yeah,
shocked at
They
that.
had a double Napoli div, so it was very quick. Or they
Mhm.
had double Napoli on one, the side I was on, rather.
And here's our screenshots of basically the changes and stuff. So Clyde did a really nice job putting this stuff together. I'm going to zoom out for a second. And I want to talk with you guys about my feelings on these after watching people go through and play them and report on them and that sort of thing. Exactly, Daystepper. There's a big difference between targeted by 6, 9, and 12 players. Yes. Come on, Kremlin. You can farm everything you want. Okay, so here's the deal in my opinion. Wargaming's goal with this whole change was to make for more variety in commander builds, right? To encourage people to experiment in different ones so that you don't have the same cookie cutter build for every ship out there. The ironic thing about that is, I don't think that many builds have changed. I would probably say 95% of the builds of all the ships in this game, for me, are probably going to stay the same. There's a couple of differences, right? Improved repair readiness, I might take more on a Soviet battleship versus, you know, whatever else. Ships that are really good at that. But here's the deal. A lot of these buffed skills have activation conditions. Okay? Here. Defense ASW Expert. Activation condition, right? Consumables does not. Dazzle, activation condition. Focus fire training, I suppose technically does not, right? Furious, activation condition. Improved repair party readiness, activation condition, right? Secondary battery range, I guess you could say activation condition because it encourages you to get within range of those secondaries, but I mean it's a flat buff, so it's up to you to how you want to call that. Super heavy AP. Yes, Grunty? Oh, I thought I heard something. Okay, Super Heavy AP does not have an activation condition. So we're talking about over half of these changed skills having some sort of activation condition to them. The problem with that is that a lot of people, when they look at numbers and they look at ships and they say, oh, this can be that and this can be that, and they're looking at essentially the best possible situations. Go back to what we were just talking about with Dazzle. Hey, for a torpedo cruiser that gets caught in radar, this is great to get out. Grunty mentioned the reality of it. It's too expensive for what it gets you. And for the most part, if you're playing a torpedo cruiser, you're probably going to want to put those points into things like concealment and things like your torpedoes, so you can you can specialize and focus in on what you have. Or, radiolocation, especially in a competitive event, you want people to know where things are. So the reality of it is, this is a very niche skill. It was a very niche skill. It's still a very niche skill. Right? Consumable Specialist is a nice skill. That one I like. I think that one makes perfect sense unless you're a French destroyer or any other destroyer that depends on main battery reload booster. Oh well. But AA Defense and ASW Expert. Again, you have to have anti-air guns active for it to work. Good luck making that happen. Right?
It's a little bit easier now because it will work if you shoot down fighter planes. It will work if you shoot down other Dutch airstrikes. It will work if you shoot down ASW planes.
Yeah.
But those planes usually don't have a lot of hit points, so your AA guns will be shooting for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds.
And you're dependent on your consumable being on cooldown and...
Yeah, the consumable
It's
needs
just
to be
too
on
much.
cooldown to buff. And you also have the problem, you think, oh yeah, I have great AA, I make my AA better.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're facing a potato CV, that CV
Right.
is most likely not gonna come near you because it knows that ship has good AA. I don't want to waste my planes on that.
Right. We were talking before last week about putting this on Dutch cruisers, for example. And that's great, again, if you're up against somebody that has no idea that Dutch cruisers have some of the strongest anti-air in the game. So, he's also missing one, by the way. I just noticed he's missing preventative maintenance that also got a buff to it. Preventative maintenance, of course, reduces the chances of losing secondaries and anti-air now in addition to the regular. So it's really handy on a secondary ship, especially one that's torpedo armed, like a lot of German battleships, for example. And it's a 1-point skill, so that's kind of sexy. But anyway, getting back to this, Furious, again, activation. I have to get myself on fire, and then I have to, ensure that I don't die while I'm burning, right? Improved. This is the one that I think is the biggest noob trap of it all, because a lot of people sit there and say, oh, 2 million potential, I can farm that easy. And then they go down at 1.6, 1.8 million potential, never having received the actual extra heal. And even if you get that extra heal, what does it matter if you're almost dead anyways? So
you might not even be able to repair that damage because you took it at citadel damage.
That as well. So what I'm trying to
you already
get...
have charges left. So
what I'm trying to get at is it's... We like to look at things on paper and say, oh, this is a great thing. Look at it in reality before you spec into it. And try to think about that. Grunty, you made a good example. I'm not trying to call somebody out as being wrong, but I think you said, was it John the Ruthless that said, hey, this is great on these ships?
It was Potato Quality's video about this.
And then you even said you went and looked up his ships, and most of his ships he didn't even average more than 2 million potential, right?
Yeah. So since you mentioned the name, he made a video, you can probably find it, about the new standard battleship build. It was something that, and pretty much in every single build he had this included. And often as a replacement effect for the 4-point skill that gives the extra consumable.
Right.
So I went ahead, I looked at his profile, and I think the only tier 10 ship I found on his profile where he got 2 million on average. And that's average. Like, that means there's games that will be below 2, there's games that are above. But the only average one at tier 10 he had was the Kremlin.
Of course. This
At
is
tier
great for
9,
Soviet battleships.
nothing.
Not
tier
really.
8,
Okay.
nothing. Even at tier supership tier, not every single supership battleship did he get 2 million average. And he's a really good battleship player. So think about, like, no offense to anyone in chat, but you're probably worse than him. If he doesn't manage to get it, you probably won't be able either.
I'm worse than him. I'll gladly I'll raise my hand right now and say I'm worse than him. So I agree with.
I understood his reasoning, but it's the chances of hitting it, or like what Dorothy said, is not the highest, because his reasoning in that video was you will get the extra heal when you need it.
Yeah.
But then when you look at it again, all the damage you've taken already at that point is permanent, so the extra heal that you get is worthless, like mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Well, a skill like this will be useful in the event that you proc it. Will be useful in maybe 5 to 10% of those battles once you've procced it, because the rest of them, the battle's already been decided. You're about to die anyway. You know, etc., etc. So the point I'm trying to make with these is, a lot of these skills require you to think more. And in my opinion, that's kind of doing a disservice to you, the player. Because you're thinking more, you're trying to activate the skill that you're speccing into. You're far better off going for skills that just have automatic, it's always like this. Super heavy AP, you always get the bonus to your AP damage, right? You think of the fire flood reduction damage as an extra bonus. That's all. So, you know, that's my first thought on these. And then the second is, like I said, a lot of people are going to get trapped into running secondaries. It is what it is. So, unfortunately, I think Wargaming missed the mark with these skills. If they were trying to make them more common.
It's a lot. Like, for example, like that AA skill buff, that 4-point cruiser skill with the 50% now. It seems like such a great buff with the 50%, and it's situational really, really good. But it doesn't change the core problem of the skill. Like, you're spending a 4-point skill that has the potential of being completely useless the moment you enter the battle just because of the matchmaking. They should have done something else with the skill to buff it to make it useful when you don't have a CV. For example, they could have done something about making your cooldowns on the depth charges and depth charge planes lower as an additional bonus, so the skill would at least be useful against a different class too. Just an idea, or just something else. It's like they're doubling down on the skill, but if it was bad, it's just as bad as before.
Right. So I think that the bigger issue is you're still going to have the same cookie cutter builds for the vast majority of ships out there. The only one that I can see taking the secondary torpedo is probably Napoli, like you mentioned. I legit can't think of any other cruiser. Maybe Michelangelo when it gets released. I don't know.
I love it on Napoli.
Schroeder is not that bad. It has improved secondary dispersion over the standard cruisers. Not as good as Napoli's, but it's improved.
It's improved. There was an actual Reddit thread where someone tested it against moving bots that didn't shoot back. And his hit rate at 10 kilometers with the Schroeder onto a moving destroyers was something like 3%.
Yeah.
Just
not surprised.
It got better against cruisers and battleships, obviously, because easier to hit. But I can see it on the Schroeder to keep it, because like you're sacrificing what, like survivability expert for it. And the Schroeder at least has the pen behind with the 128s, the pen 32. But if you're going to different ships like Aegir down, where you only pen like 26, you have the 105s, and then you're investing a 3-point skill for secondaries that don't even do much.
Right.
Like,
so to me, that's the issue with a lot of these commander skills. They're situational, and the big problem is that they take away points that would be better suited on other skills, either survivability skills or skills that would help you do more damage overall, right? For cruisers, for example, I would much rather play a lighthouse build Hindenburg than a secondary spec Hindenburg, right? Or, you know, there's other possibilities out there, but I do see comments about the captain skills document done by Yura and Yuzuro. I think that's what I'm looking at right now. And
Yeah,
they
that's
have
the document.
Consumables Specialist. See, that's interesting because that's changed on this one.
I'm
I
actually
don't
not
know.
even sure if they updated all the builds yet because they were quite slow, which is good
Yeah.
because they were actually testing the stuff too and not just putting it out.
Yeah.
I want to
How do
mention
you
another
move?
trap as well before we move from the consumables.
Okay.
Because I thought about it on paper. Furious on the Republic with Legendary mod. If you're on fire with 4 fires and 2 floods, which would be the best case scenario, and you with Adrenaline Rush taking effect, you will have a 10-second reload. That would be the best case scenario. But then
The
you look at
Republic
it,
will melt under HE
yeah,
fire because of the
I was about
32
to say,
millimeter
but
armor.
then that's the best case scenario. But you look at it, then when you try to pull it off, you're
Mhm.
gonna be dead before you probably even get the
Right.
second flood to get the maximum
Right.
reload.
And, you know, people, again, when they think about, oh, I'm fire and flood, no problem, but they're not thinking about all the additional shells that are hitting and penetrating their armor while they're
Yeah.
on fire, you know?
Not to mention
What?
the permanent damage the torpedo will do.
Yeah.
You won't be able to heal back.
So, I would say if you can afford to skip these skills for now, at least skip them. You can always spec into them later if other people find that it works well. Like I said, there's only a couple of cases, right? Let me go back up through this list. AA Defense and ASW Expert. I just don't find it useful for cruisers right now, unless, like Renty said, you find somebody that derps into your range and stuff like that. It's just so situational. In the games that I played it, I didn't find it useful. For battleships,
I have it on 3 cruisers right now.
The only cruiser I find it useful on is the San Martin, just because if you don't get your combat instructions off, having planes in your AA range alleviates a bit of the cooldown.
I kept it on my Dutch cruisers. And I kept it on my unique upgrade mod Minotaur. Because the upside of getting the smoke cooldown to potentially 0 in the unique upgrade Minotaur is just too good to pass up.
Right.
But it comes at a cost. Like, I don't have survivability expert. I don't have top grade gunner. So,
Well, and that's the thing. You're giving up a lot in order to do this. You're giving up more DPM with your main guns, with gun feeder, in order to do this. Consumable Specialist, I think you guys would all agree that that's a nice one to have for most destroyers anyways. And then same thing with cruisers. Some battleships could also benefit from using this.
it's great. Probably still not the first tier 1 skill I would take.
Yeah.
But definitely considering for leftover points.
Right. So this one I think is a win. I think they did a nice job with that. At 1 point. Dazzle, I just don't see it. Unless, again, you're speccing for, like, super competitive COTS and you know your ship and you know you're going to be playing within radar range of enemies. Maybe clan battles I could see use case for this as well. But giving
Still
up...
like it on German DDs.
Yeah,
But
giving
I had
up...
it before, and you're sacrificing.
You are, because you're giving up most of the time radio location, which gives you so much more information. So, I would say Dazzle's probably not going to be useful, unfortunately. I'm trying to snooze the next ad break. All right, focus fire training. It's fine if you want to build an anti-air spec cruiser. Battleship too, I suppose, but cruiser I could see you going for this. I still don't think it's that helpful.
I can see it for a cruiser. For a battleship at 3, I'd much rather incline on a battleship to actually take the other skill because it only costs 2 on battleships.
The other skill.
Which is much more affordable. Yeah, the ASW Defense Expert is a 2-point skill for battleships.
Right. Right. Focus fire training, Furious, we kind of hammered that one home. That's probably not going to be that useful. Improved repair party readiness. We've Soviet battleships, tier 10, Tier 11, maybe tier 9. Maybe you can make the case for putting it on the Lenin at tier 8. Beyond that, I wouldn't bother.
Maybe Ohio. You
Maybe.
might be able to get the potential damage up really fast since your heals come out cooldown really quick anyways.
Again, what I said before I think is really important. You need to look at your own experience playing the ship. Look at your reports. Look at your average potential damage in that ship. If your average potential damage is close to 2 million, okay, give it a shot. But if your average potential damage is closer to 1 million, you're probably not going to proc this with you know, any impact on the battle for the most part. So keep that in mind. Secondary Armament Specialist, Napoli. You guys were talking, Pock, you said Schroeder.
I mentioned it, yeah. Because that's slightly improved. Marsilli has slightly improved as well.
Problem with the Marseille is the layout of the secondaries, though, which was pointed out by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
They're all sitting in the back, so they can't really shoot forward. And usually you're pointing nose in a Marseille because all your guns are facing forward.
Right. Right. So it's not as helpful as you think. Super heavy AP. There's only a couple of really good use cases for that, and that's mainly going to be like Vermont, maybe Montana, maybe a couple other battleships that you're almost always going to sling AP for, that you've got the room to add it in comp. Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, you're probably not going to want to use this. So, one thing I want to mention is for a lot of people who are maybe watching this thing, okay, I haven't spec'd into commander skills, what should I do? Either you wait, or if you know you want, if you're thinking about testing out a commander skill, then leave that many points left behind in your commander build. So if you want to test super AP, or if you want to decide whether or not improved repair party readiness is something for you, then just go ahead and spec into everything else, and then, you know, decide after that, okay, so I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do, you know, if I'm doing a Zeton, well, doesn't matter. Let's say I'm doing a Soviet battleship. Maybe I want to do something like this, okay? So now I'll go and play it and see, am I getting 2 million potential? If I am, okay, cool. I'll pick this one up as well. If not, then I won't bother.
If not, then you may as well take basics of survivability, reduce the fire and flood time.
Bingo. Exactly. At least now you still have those points available to put in other things. I would caution you against, I mean, you're more than welcome to watch other people with their videos and their takes on what works and what doesn't. What comes down to it is you have to decide yourself if it's going to work for you or not. You know how you play. You know, other people don't know how you play. So the best thing for you to do is think about it after the fact. Would this have come in handy in this battle? Yes or no? Get your own data and then make your decision accordingly. If you don't have a ton of 21-point commanders to play around with, I'd like to point out that the public test is always a good option, because you can go on there. Commander skills aren't going to change again for some time, I'd imagine. So you can go and play to your heart's content on the public test and screw around with them and see what skills work. Write down the skills or screenshot the skills that you like, and then apply them to your main build on the main client. It would have been nice if Wargaming... Yes?
PTS is usually 9v9, and a lot of the ships are botted charging in. So if you're looking at anything that has related to potential damage or so, your numbers on the PTS will be so much lower than what it will be on the live server. So you can't really take this into account.
Okay. Good to know. That's a good point. But it's a good idea to, at the very least, think through, you know, how you want to set these things up. If you are fortunate like me and you've got multiple 21-point captains, this is the point in time where I want to remind you guys that every captain comes with 4 different builds on them, right? You can spec a captain for a destroyer, for an aircraft carrier, for a battleship, for a cruiser. And these skills obviously are destroyer, cruiser, battleship. So you can take a 21-point captain on, say, the Midway, and you can slap him on your Massachusetts and see how you want to build him up for the Massachusetts. You can take that same captain and you can slap him on a Wichita, I don't know, and see, or a Salem might be a better example, and see how that works for that premium ship. And your results from premium ships and experimenting with commanders may help inform your decision on the tech tree ships with captains that are actually spec'd for those ships. So the point I'm getting at is there's an awful lot that you can go back and forth on. Please do not feel like, okay, I've got my Zeton captain, he's going to go here, and he's only going to live here for the rest of his life. You can take him and you can put him on literally any premium German other class ship and have a brand spanking new. Here, let's put him on the mines, right? I can go ahead and I can assign commander, and I can find that the commander that is currently on my Zeton. There he is. Now I can put him on the Zeton. He's got no cruiser skills. He's a blank slate. I can go play with him. So that's something that you can think about with commanders. Now, I know a lot of people want to know, well, where should I put my best, my special captains, right? My unique commanders that have the talents, or the ones that have the buffed skills. I would say, figure out the main stuff first, and then decide from there, okay, where do I want to put Von Jutland? Where do I want to put John Doe? Where do I want to put Halsey, right? And what do I want to put on those captains? But try them first with regular 21 pointers, because they're so expensive to keep changing around builds and stuff like that. That's an idea that I had. And last but not least, wait and see. Watch what other people do, and then make your decisions partially off of what they find. Okay. But is there anything else to add to this discussion, gentlemen? Chat, anything else you want to add?
Don't think so.
Joey says the Torpin secondary skill, the secondary range is the bait, and if you focus it mostly on cruisers as buffing your torpedoes on your cruisers, on cruisers that you spam a lot of torpedoes, Yoshino might come to mind, then sure, you could definitely get away with that. But the point I'm making is you're speccing into that anyways, because that's something that's going to help you out. And you probably would have normally spec'd it that way, is what I'm trying to get at. That the additional secondary didn't have any impact on how you spec the ship before the change. So you end up, again, with still cookie cutter builds. Honestly, the best way for wargaming to change things around is going to be to either nerf the parts that everybody's used to, that's causing it to be a cookie cutter build. I'm talking about nerfing Concealment Expert. I'm talking about, nerfing Superintendent somehow. Or, you get the idea. Or, if they're going to buff skills, they need to buff skills so that they're buffed in a way that it's not conditional. That's a tough thing for them to do. But I don't know how else they can do it.
They seem to like the conditional thing. Like, just look at what the sub-skills are.
Yeah.
It's pretty much majority of the stuff.
I hate it. Also, cruisers need a preventive maintenance, man.
Why are they taking away from cruisers?
It would be so easy. Like, my proposition to get preventive maintenance on cruisers is you take the 1-point torpedo skill, which is the torpedo speed, and you bake that into the 2-point skill, which is a torpedo reload, or you bake it into the 3-point skill, the pack the punch, and that just frees up a 1-point skill that you could just make preventive maintenance.
I'd love to see. We've seen a commander rework. I think the commander rework needs another rework. Frankly, I love the idea that they're tossing some love to the commander skills. I just feel like it's a miss for so many, and I'd love to see wargaming maybe even consider just wiping the slate clean and starting over. I'd also love to see wargaming push 25-point captains.
Yeah, you say that because you have 117 million commander XP that you could use to get all your commanders to 25.
I mean, even if I didn't, I'm just simply saying it opens up a lot more flexibility than what we have right
But
now.
wouldn't that just end up in basically everybody having the best skills for every ship?
Perhaps.
Then you wouldn't have to make choices anymore, like if you increase the point level. Like, I would love it for some of my commanders to get some extra skills, don't get me wrong. But if you can take everything you need, then what's the point of the commander skills again?
Yeah. So, and that's why I said ultimately I think the best thing for them to do is just completely blank slate it, start over again, and try to figure out how they want commanders to work in this game and what they can do about it. Because it's just you have the same cookie cutter builds all across. Even to the point when I was casting King of the Sea, how many times did I say COTS build gearing, right? COTS build daring. How many times did I say, oh look, it's your sniper spec Vermont because that's how you build it. It's your sniper spec Ohio because that's how you build it in competitive. 420 Blaze of Hargamo. I mean, you know, with a couple little tweaks, the build was pretty much the same across the board. So that should be informing Wargaming. Hey, we need to find better ways to vary things up. But we'll cut it at this point. This will indeed go out to YouTube. For those of you guys who watched on YouTube, thank you for listening all the way up to this point. Do me a favor. I'm gonna come up with we need a fun word to post into the comment section. If you got to this point, what should we use as the secret word? I think we can. How about we do? Let me think about this. How about we do noob trap? So if you got to this point in the video on YouTube, comment noob trap because it'd be kind of fun to see how many people got there. And also, let us all know what you think about in terms of the commander rework or revision. And what would you like to see done differently? How would you fix this problem? Noob, not nude. Noob trap, Wolf. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We're going to cut it here, and we're going to go back to our Stream Raiders break screen.